Right here, right at this moment, the saint who never fails to help desperate souls is positioning himself to transform your impossible situation into your greatest testimony. If your heart is crying out for divine intervention, if your situation feels hopeless, if you need St. Anthony to move heaven and earth for you tonight, then smash that like button and let heaven know you're ready for miracles. Subscribe and turn on those notifications, because what you're about to experience will change everything. Share this video with someone whose prayers seem unanswered. You might be delivering their miracle. There's a woman in Manila right now who can barely hold her phone steady as she watches this video. 3 hours ago, the doctors told her that her 7-year-old daughter has a brain tumor and surgery might leave her permanently disabled. She's been searching for hope, for a sign, for anything that might save her child. What she doesn't know yet is that St. Anthony heard her desperate cry in that hospital corridor. What she can't see is that even as medical professionals speak of worst-case scenarios, supernatural intervention is already in motion. This isn't coincidence that brought you here today. This isn't random chance that placed these words before your eyes. This is divine appointment. This is St. Anthony calling you by name, drawing you into a sacred moment where the impossible becomes inevitable. But first, you need to understand something that most people never discover about how St. Anthony works his most powerful miracles. It's not just about asking for help. It's about creating the exact spiritual conditions that allow heaven's power to flood into earthly circumstances. Think about that person in your life who seems to get their prayers answered instantly while you wait months for even small breakthroughs. What they know, what very few people understand, is that St. Anthony responds to desperate faith expressed through specific spiritual positions. A man in Lagos is driving home from another failed job interview right now. His family has been surviving on 1 meal a day for 2 weeks. His children ask him when Daddy will find work, and he has no answer except promises that feel emptier each time he makes them. He's been praying for months, but tonight everything changes. Tonight he learns the difference between casual requests and the kind of prayer that moves St. Anthony to immediate action. Here's what transforms ordinary prayer into miracle-working power. When you approach St. Anthony not as a beggar asking for coins, but as a child of God claiming your inheritance. When you pray not from desperation alone, but from desperate faith mixed with unshakable certainty that your breakthrough is already prepared. Let me tell you about Sophia from Barcelona. 6 months ago, she was exactly where you might be right now, broken, discouraged, ready to give up on miracles entirely. Her marriage was ending after 15 years. Her business had collapsed. Her teenage son was using drugs and stealing money to buy them. She had prayed novenas, lit candles, made promises to saints. Nothing seemed to work. But one night, instead of begging St. Anthony for help, she did something that changed everything. She thanked him for the miracle that was already on its way. She praised him for the intervention she couldn't yet see. She spoke to him as if the healing, the restoration, the breakthrough had already happened, and she was simply waiting for the physical world to catch up with spiritual reality. Drop a comment right now and tell St. Anthony exactly what impossible situation needs his immediate attention in your life. Don't hold back. Don't be polite. Tell him everything. What happened to Sophia over the next 30 days proves that St. Anthony responds to faith that refuses to accept defeat. Her husband, who had already moved out and filed divorce papers, came home one evening and asked to talk. Not to fight, not to argue, but to truly communicate for the first time in years. The conversation that should have ended their marriage became the conversation that saved it. Wounds that had festered for years were healed in hours. Love that seemed dead was resurrected stronger than it had ever been. Her business, which creditors were ready to liquidate, received an unexpected investment offer from a source that had never shown interest before. The investor said he'd had a vivid dream about helping a woman rebuild her failing company, and when he met Sophia, he knew she was the one from his dream. Her son, who had been angry and defiant for months, walked into her room one morning and confessed everything. Not because she threatened him or caught him, but because he said he felt an overwhelming need to tell the truth and ask for help. But here's what convinced Sophia that she had encountered supernatural intervention. Each person who helped her mentioned having unusually powerful dreams about assisting a woman whose circumstances matched hers exactly. The husband who returned spoke of dreams where a man in brown robes urged him to fight for his family. The investor described visions of helping a business owner whose integrity impressed heaven itself. Her son talked about nightmares where he saw his future if he continued using drugs, and dreams where the same brown-robed figure showed him a better path. Right now, as you listen to these words, Saint Anthony is preparing similar divine appointments in your life. The people who will help you, the opportunities that will open, the circumstances that will shift, they're all being arranged by invisible hands working on your behalf. But you need to do what Sophia did. You need to shift from begging Saint Anthony for miracles to thanking him for miracles already in motion. You need to stop praying like a victim and start praying like a victor whose victory is guaranteed. A family in Kenya is huddled around their only phone right now, listening to these words while their youngest child fights malaria in a hospital bed. The doctors have done everything they can. The medicines aren't working. Hope is slipping away with each labored breath. They don't have money for experimental treatments. They don't have connections to better hospitals. They don't have anything except faith that somehow, some way, Saint Anthony can reach into their situation and create a miracle where medicine has failed. What they're about to discover is that Saint Anthony specializes in exactly these moments, when human effort has reached its limit and only divine power can bridge the gap between death and life. Here's the prayer that has moved mountains, opened prison doors, healed incurable diseases, and brought dead dreams back to life. But listen carefully. This isn't just words to be spoken. This is a spiritual key that unlocks heaven's storehouse of miracles. Saint Anthony of Padua, miracle worker beyond human understanding, I come before you not with polite requests, but with a soul on fire for divine intervention. You know my situation better than I can explain it. You see the impossibility that faces me. You understand the desperation that drives me to your feet. But I'm not here just to ask. I'm here to claim what heaven has already prepared for those who trust completely in your power. I'm here to thank you for the breakthrough that is already in motion, for the miracle that is already being prepared, for the victory that is already assured. Saint Anthony, you who have never failed those who trust in your intercession, I place my impossible situation in your hands with complete confidence, not hoping that you might help, but knowing with absolute certainty that you will help. I thank you for the phone call that's coming with good news. I praise you for the opportunity that will appear from nowhere. I celebrate the healing that is already flowing through the body that needs it. I rejoice in the provision that is being released from unexpected sources. Saint Anthony, work your miracle in my life not because I deserve it, but because you delight in demonstrating heaven's power through impossible circumstances. Show the world through my testimony that you still perform wonders for those who believe without doubting. I receive my miracle now. I claim my breakthrough today. I seize my victory immediately. In Jesus' name, through your powerful intercession, I pray with faith that moves mountains and confidence that shakes heaven. Amen. Share this video right now with 3 people who need to know that miracles are still happening. Your obedience could be the trigger that releases their breakthrough. Something shifted in the spiritual realm the moment you prayed that prayer. Can you feel it? That's not just emotion. That's the atmosphere around your situation beginning to change. That's Saint Anthony moving into position to work wonders on your behalf. A businessman in São Paulo is about to discover what happens when heaven decides to intervene in human affairs. For 8 months, he's been watching his company slowly die. Clients have disappeared. Contracts have been canceled. Bills pile up while income dries up like a river in drought. Tomorrow morning, he was planning to close the business permanently and declare bankruptcy. Tonight, he prayed the prayer you just prayed. He thanked Saint Anthony for intervention he couldn't see. He praised him for miracles still invisible to human eyes. What he doesn't know yet is that while he's been struggling to save his business through human effort, St. Anthony has been preparing a divine solution that will not only save the company, but transform it into something greater than it ever was before. At 9:30 tomorrow morning, his phone will ring with an offer that seems too good to be true. A multinational corporation will propose a partnership that provides immediate funding, long-term security, and growth opportunities he never dared to imagine. The executive making the offer will mention having a recurring dream about partnering with a small company in São Paulo whose owner demonstrated unusual integrity during difficult times. The dream was so vivid, so persistent, that he convinced his board to investigate companies in that city until they found one that matched the dream details. That company is about to be rescued from bankruptcy and elevated to international success, all because its owner shifted from desperate pleading to grateful believing. But miracles don't always look like what we expect. Sometimes St. Anthony's greatest interventions come disguised as ordinary circumstances that turn extraordinary at precisely the right moment. Let me tell you about Maria from Guatemala. 2 years ago, her husband was arrested on charges that would send him to prison for 15 years. The evidence looked overwhelming. The prosecutor was confident. Even their lawyer suggested accepting a plea bargain for a shorter sentence rather than risking a trial. Maria could have spent those months visiting lawyers, raising money for appeals, or drowning in worry about her family's future. Instead, she did something that seemed foolish to everyone around her but proved to be supernaturally wise. She thanked St. Anthony daily for her husband's freedom. Not freedom that might come eventually, but freedom that was already guaranteed in heaven's court, even though earth's court hadn't recognized it yet. She prepared for his homecoming while he sat in jail. She made plans that only made sense if he would be completely exonerated. She spoke about his future as if his innocence had already been proven beyond doubt. Her friends thought grief had made her delusional. Her family worried that unrealistic hope was preventing her from accepting harsh reality. But Maria knew something they didn't understand, that St. Anthony works in advance of visible results, arranging circumstances that won't be seen until exactly the right moment. 3 days before the trial, a witness came forward who had been afraid to speak earlier. This person provided evidence that not only proved Maria's husband was innocent, but revealed who the real criminals were. The case was dismissed with apologies from the court. But here's what made everyone recognize divine intervention. The witness later said he had been having the same dream every night for 2 months. In the dream, a man in brown robes told him that an innocent man would go to prison unless he found the courage to tell the truth. The dreams became so intense, so disturbing, that he finally contacted the lawyer just to make them stop. When he arrived at the courthouse, he recognized Maria's husband as the innocent man from his dreams. Type, "St. Anthony is working for me" in the comments if you believe he's already arranging circumstances for your breakthrough. Right now, while you're watching this video, similar divine appointments are being arranged in your situation. The people who can help you are being moved into position. The opportunities you need are being created. The evidence that will vindicate you is being prepared. You can't see it yet because St. Anthony works in the invisible realm first, then manifests results in the visible world at exactly the right time. But your part is to thank him now for what you'll see later. A single mother in Detroit is working her 3rd job tonight, trying to pay rent and keep food on the table for her 2 young children. She's exhausted, overwhelmed, and running out of hope that life will ever get easier. She's been praying for help for months, but the help hasn't come. Bills keep growing, expenses keep rising. Her children need things she can't afford. She's beginning to wonder if God has forgotten about her family. What she doesn't understand yet is that St. Anthony never forgets. He's been watching her sacrifice for her children. He's seen her go without meals so they can eat. He's witnessed her working while others sleep, giving while others take, hoping while others despair. Tonight, that changes. Tonight, her faithfulness is rewarded with supernatural provision that will shock everyone who knows her circumstances. The letter in her mailbox tomorrow contains news that will transform her family's financial future forever. an inheritance from a relative she barely knew, money she never expected from a source she had forgotten existed. But it's not just money, it's the exact amount needed to pay every debt, cover every expense, and provide security she's never experienced. Down to the penny, it matches her desperate need with heaven's abundant supply. The relative who remembered her in his will told his lawyer about a dream where a man in brown robes insisted that a struggling single mother be included as a beneficiary. The lawyer thought it was strange, but legal documents were changed to follow the dying man's vision. 3 generations of that family will trace their prosperity back to St. Anthony's intervention in one desperate mother's life. Her children will go to college. Her grandchildren will grow up in security. Her great-grandchildren will inherit a legacy that began with supernatural provision in her darkest hour. But you need to understand that St. Anthony doesn't just fix problems, he transforms lives. He doesn't just provide temporary relief, he creates permanent change. He doesn't just give you enough to survive, he gives you enough to thrive and help others. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell. When you join our community, you're not just following content, you're connecting with thousands of people who have experienced St. Anthony's miraculous intervention firsthand. Let me share something that will revolutionize how you pray from this moment forward. Most people approach St. Anthony like he's a vending machine. Insert prayer, expect instant results, get frustrated when nothing appears immediately. But St. Anthony works more like a master architect. He doesn't just slap a quick fix onto your problem. He redesigns your entire situation to create outcomes better than anything you initially requested. A couple in Mumbai discovered this when their marriage reached the point of complete breakdown. 23 years together, 3 children, a successful business built together, all about to be destroyed by bitterness, betrayal, and broken communication. They had tried counseling, therapy, separation periods, renewed commitment ceremonies. Nothing worked. The love that once seemed unbreakable had shattered into pieces too small to glue back together. They prayed to St. Anthony not for marriage restoration, that seemed impossible, but simply for the ability to divorce peacefully without destroying their children or their business partnership. What St. Anthony did instead proves that his solutions exceed our best-case scenarios. Rather than just helping them divorce nicely, he healed the root causes that had poisoned their relationship. Rather than just managing the symptoms, he cured the disease. It started with small changes that seemed unrelated to their marriage problems. The husband, who had been working 18-hour days to avoid going home, suddenly found his business running more efficiently with less personal involvement. He had time for family again, but more importantly, he had energy for family again. The wife, who had been bitter about carrying all household responsibilities alone, received unexpected help from extended family members who volunteered to assist with children and household management. Her stress decreased, which allowed her natural warmth and humor to resurface. Their children, who had been acting out due to sensing their parents' tension, became calmer and more cooperative. The home environment shifted from battlefield to sanctuary. But the real miracle happened when they realized that the problems they thought were caused by incompatibility were actually caused by external pressures that had nothing to do with their love for each other. Today, they describe their marriage as better than it was during their honeymoon period. They're not just staying together, they're thriving together in ways they never experienced even when their relationship was good. The counselor they had been seeing asked what had changed so dramatically in such a short time. When they mentioned their prayers to St. Anthony, she said she had recently started having dreams about recommending a different approach to couples therapy, one that addressed spiritual and emotional roots rather than just communication techniques. Tell us in the comments about a relationship in your life that needs St. Anthony's healing touch. Don't hold back. He can handle any level of brokenness. Here's what you need to understand about how St. Anthony chooses which miracles to perform and when to perform them. It's not random. It's not based on who deserves help most or who has suffered longest. It's based on faith that creates the right spiritual conditions for supernatural intervention. Think of faith like a radio frequency. When you tune your heart to the exact frequency of trust, gratitude, and expectation. You create a clear channel through which St. Anthony can broadcast miracles into your circumstances. Most people's faith sounds like static to heaven, mixture of belief and doubt, trust and worry, hope and fear. But when you tune your spiritual receiver to pure faith frequency, miracles come through loud and clear. A teenage girl in Nigeria is about to discover what happens when someone tunes their faith to St. Anthony's miracle frequency with crystal clarity. Her parents can't afford school fees for next semester. Her grades are excellent, her dreams are big, but money is the barrier that seems insurmountable. Scholarship applications were rejected. Part-time jobs don't pay enough. The family has sold everything they can sell. Tomorrow she should be preparing to drop out of school and find work to help support her family. But tonight, she prayed differently than she's ever prayed before. Instead of asking St. Anthony to somehow find money for her education, she thanked him for the scholarship that was already being prepared for someone exactly like her. Instead of begging him to open doors, she praised him for doors that were already swinging open. She tuned her faith to the frequency of complete trust, and St. Anthony's response will arrive at exactly the right moment, through exactly the right channel. The email that arrives tomorrow morning contains an offer that will change not just her educational future, but her family's entire financial situation. An international foundation has created a new scholarship program specifically for students in her circumstances. She is not just eligible, she is their ideal candidate. But it's more than tuition money. It includes living expenses, family support payments, and guaranteed internship placement with companies that recruit globally. What started as a need for semester fees becomes a pathway to international career opportunities. The foundation director will mention that the scholarship program was created after a board member had recurring dreams about a girl in Nigeria whose potential was being wasted due to financial limitations. The dreams were so specific, so compelling, that they allocated funds immediately to find and support exactly that type of student. By the time she graduates, this young woman will be positioned to not only lift her own family out of poverty, but to create opportunities for hundreds of other students facing similar barriers. One prayer, tuned to the frequency of perfect faith, creates generational transformation that ripples through communities and continues for decades. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their breakthrough is closer than they think. Your obedience in sharing could be the key that unlocks their miracle. But St. Anthony's miracles aren't limited to individual lives. Sometimes he works on scales that affect entire communities, reshaping circumstances for thousands of people through single acts of divine intervention. Let me tell you about what happened in a small town in the Philippines when an entire community learned to pray with unified faith that created unstoppable supernatural momentum. The town's only major employer, a factory that provided jobs for 60% of the working population, announced permanent closure due to economic conditions beyond their control. 15,000 people faced unemployment with no other significant job opportunities within traveling distance. Government officials offered sympathy, but no solutions. Economic development experts said recovery would take decades, if it happened at all. Real estate values collapsed as people prepared to relocate to cities for work. Instead of accepting this economic death sentence, the community gathered in their central church for 3 days of continuous prayer to St. Anthony, not just asking him to save their factory, but thanking him for the economic miracle that would exceed anything they had lost. They prayed as one voice, with one heart, with one unshakable belief that St. Anthony specializes in impossible reversals that leave communities stronger than before their crisis. On the 4th day, something happened that economists still study as an example of supernatural economic intervention. A technology company announced plans to build their new regional headquarters in that exact town, not just a small satellite office, but a major facility that would employ more people at higher wages than the factory had ever provided. The company's site selection team said they had originally planned to build in a major city 300 miles away, but multiple team members reported the same vivid dreams about a small town with a strong community spirit and work ethic that would be perfect for their company culture. When they investigated, they found the town that had been praying. When they visited, they were so impressed by the community's unity and faith that they changed their plans immediately. But the miracles didn't stop there. The technology company's presence attracted other businesses to the area. What had been economic disaster became economic boom. Property values didn't just recover, they tripled. Young people who had left for opportunities in big cities returned home to better jobs than they could have found anywhere else. Today, that town is held up as a model of community development and economic revitalization. Business schools send students to study how a dying town became a thriving technology hub almost overnight. But community leaders know the real story. They know that St. Anthony responded to unified faith with coordinated miracles that transformed their economic reality permanently. Type, "My community needs St. Anthony's blessing" in the comments if you want to pray for supernatural intervention in your local area. The same power that transformed an entire town's economic future is available for your personal situation. The same St. Anthony who coordinated international business decisions to save thousands of jobs can coordinate circumstances to solve your specific problem. But you have to pray with the same level of faith that community demonstrated, not hoping St. Anthony might help, but knowing with absolute certainty that he will help. A doctor in Germany is about to discover what happens when medical expertise combines with St. Anthony's supernatural intervention to create healing that amazes even healthcare professionals. For 6 months, she's been treating a young patient whose condition has baffled medical teams across Europe. Every treatment has failed. Every experimental protocol has provided no improvement. The child's parents are running out of hope, and she's running out of medical options to offer. Tonight, instead of reviewing more medical journals looking for solutions she knows don't exist, she does something that wasn't part of her medical training but proves more effective than any technique she learned in medical school. She prays to St. Anthony not just for the child's healing, but for supernatural wisdom to recognize the treatment approach that heaven has already prepared for this specific case. Tomorrow morning, a colleague from another country will call with information about a treatment protocol that's never been used for this condition, but contains elements that address the unique aspects of this child's case. The treatment will work beyond all medical predictions, not just stopping the progression of the disease, but reversing damage that was considered permanent, not just saving the child's life, but restoring capabilities that medical science said were lost forever. The colleague who provided the crucial information will mention having persistent dreams about calling this specific doctor regarding this specific case. The dreams included details about the child's condition that hadn't been shared publicly, confirming that supernatural guidance directed the contact. Within 2 years, this treatment approach will be adapted for similar cases worldwide, saving hundreds of children whose conditions had been considered hopeless. One doctor's faith-filled prayer will create medical breakthroughs that revolutionize pediatric care internationally. But the real miracle isn't just the medical breakthrough. It's how St. Anthony used one desperate prayer to create healing solutions that help countless families facing similar heartbreak. This is how St. Anthony works his greatest miracles. He doesn't just solve individual problems. He creates solutions that multiply blessings across communities, generations, and sometimes entire sectors of human need. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. When you connect with our community, you're joining thousands of people who've learned to recognize St. Anthony's miraculous interventions in every area of life. Now let me share something that will change how you see difficult circumstances forever. Most people think problems are obstacles to overcome, but St. Anthony sees problems as raw materials for miracles. Every financial crisis is potential provision testimony. Every health challenge is potential healing miracle. Every broken relationship is potential restoration story. Every impossible situation is potential supernatural breakthrough. A family in Brazil is about to learn this truth in the most dramatic way possible. Their teenage daughter has been missing for 2 weeks. Police investigations have found no leads. Search teams have covered hundreds of square miles with no success. Hope dims with each passing day as the worst-case scenarios become more likely. The parents have exhausted every human resource available. Private investigators have no more strategies to try. Missing person networks have distributed information nationwide without results. They face the horrible possibility that they may never see their daughter again. Tonight, they choose to trust St. Anthony with their most precious treasure, their child's life and safe return. They don't just pray for her to be found. They thank St. Anthony for her safe return that is already being orchestrated by invisible hands. They prepare her room as if she's coming home tomorrow. They plan the celebration meal they'll share when the family is complete again. Their faith seems irrational to everyone around them, but it creates the exact spiritual conditions that allow St. Anthony to work his most powerful interventions. At this very moment, while they pray with desperate faith, their daughter, held captive 200 miles away, is experiencing something that will lead directly to her rescue and the arrest of her kidnappers. The man guarding her falls into an unusually deep sleep and begins having terrifying nightmares about a figure in brown robes who demands the girl's immediate release. The dreams are so vivid, so frightening, that he wakes up and immediately calls his partners to abandon their plans. But instead of just releasing her, the supernatural fear compels him to drive directly to the nearest police station and confess everything, providing information that leads to the rescue of not just this girl, but 3 other children held in different locations. When the police arrive to rescue her, she tells them about the kind man in brown robes who appeared in her cell regularly, bringing her food when her captors forgot to feed her, and telling her that her parents' prayers would bring her home safely. The rescue happens so quickly, the arrests are so complete, the evidence is so overwhelming that the case becomes a textbook example of perfect law enforcement coordination. But the family knows the real story, that St. Anthony turned their worst nightmare into their greatest testimony of supernatural protection. The detective in charge of the case mentions having unusual intuitive flashes about where to search and whom to question. Following these hunches led to breakthrough after breakthrough until the entire criminal network was dismantled. This family's darkest hour became the moment when St. Anthony demonstrated that no situation is too desperate, no problem too complex, no enemy too powerful for supernatural intervention. Tell us in the comments about someone you know who needs St. Anthony's protective intervention. Prayer is most powerful when it's specific and heartfelt. But here's what makes St. Anthony's miracles different from temporary solutions or lucky breaks. His interventions create permanent positive change that continues blessing lives long after the initial crisis is resolved. The family whose daughter was rescued doesn't just get their child back. They become advocates for missing children nationwide. Their story inspires policy changes that improve law enforcement response to kidnapping cases. The criminal network that was dismantled due to supernatural pressure had been operating for years, destroying dozens of families. St. Anthony's intervention in one case eliminates threats to countless potential future victims. The detective who followed supernatural hunches becomes more sensitive to intuitive guidance in subsequent cases, solving previously unsolvable crimes and bringing justice to families who had lost hope. One family's desperate prayer creates ripple effects of positive change that continue expanding outward, touching lives they'll never know about directly. This is the signature of authentic St. Anthony miracles. They don't just fix immediate problems, but create lasting transformation that improves circumstances for many people across extended time periods. A businessman in Egypt is about to experience this kind of lasting transformation in ways that will amaze everyone who knows his current circumstances. His import business has been destroyed by economic sanctions that cut off his supply chains and eliminated his customer base. 18 years of building relationships, developing markets, and creating reliable systems, all wiped out by political decisions beyond his control. He's lost his office lease, had to sell his vehicles, and is borrowing money for basic family expenses. At 55 years old, he faces starting over from zero with skills that seem outdated in the current market. Everyone advises him to find employment with someone else's company. His age works against him. His experience is in areas that no longer function the same way. His networking contacts have their own problems to solve. But instead of accepting defeat, he prays to Saint Anthony with a perspective that transforms his entire situation. He doesn't ask for his old business to be restored. Those circumstances are gone permanently. Instead, he asks Saint Anthony to reveal the business opportunity that's been prepared for his specific skills and experience, but has been invisible until this moment. He thanks Saint Anthony for the career transformation that will prove more profitable and fulfilling than anything he's lost. He prepares to learn new skills at an age when others consider themselves too old to change. His faith creates the spiritual opening through which Saint Anthony can introduce him to opportunities that didn't exist in his previous business model, but are perfect for the new economic environment. The phone call comes from a source he would never have expected, a former customer whose own business has evolved in directions that require exactly the type of consulting services he can provide based on his years of import experience. But it's not just one client. It's an entire network of businesses facing challenges that his hard-won expertise can solve. What started as consulting becomes a new career that pays better than his old business ever did, requires less overhead investment, and allows him to work with clients internationally rather than being limited to local markets. Within 2 years, he's training other consultants to handle the volume of requests his reputation has generated. His business failure becomes the foundation for business success that exceeds anything he achieved in his previous career. The economic sanctions that destroyed his import business forced him to discover consulting abilities he never knew he possessed. Saint Anthony used his greatest setback to position him for his greatest comeback. Share this video with someone facing career transitions or business failures. They need to know that Saint Anthony specializes in turning endings into beginnings that exceed what was lost. Sometimes Saint Anthony's greatest miracles happen not by changing external circumstances, but by changing internal perspectives that make the same circumstances into opportunities rather than obstacles. A widow in Ireland learned this when she faced the first Christmas after her husband's death. 43 years of marriage ended suddenly with his heart attack, leaving her alone in a house that felt empty, with traditions that felt impossible to continue, facing holidays that promised only painful reminders of loss. Her adult children lived in different countries, pursuing careers that made travel difficult during holiday seasons. Her health wasn't good enough for her to travel to visit them. She faced spending Christmas alone for the first time in decades. The loneliness felt overwhelming. The grief felt unbearable. The future felt blank and meaningless without her life partner. She prayed to Saint Anthony not to bring her husband back, that was impossible, but to help her find purpose and joy in life without him, to show her how to honor his memory while building new meaning for her remaining years. Saint Anthony's response came through a series of small events that completely transformed her perspective on widowhood from burden to opportunity. A neighbor mentioned struggling to provide Christmas for her grandchildren due to financial difficulties. The widow realized she had skills in gift-making and baking that could help, plus time to volunteer that she'd never had while caring for her husband. Another neighbor, recently divorced, was also facing Christmas alone with young children. Together, they could create new traditions that honored their different circumstances while providing companionship during difficult seasons. The local church needed volunteers for their Christmas outreach programs. Her decades of hospitality experience made her perfect for coordinating meal preparation for families in need. What started as the worst Christmas of her life became the beginning of the most purposeful period of her life. Her grief transformed into compassion for others facing loss. Her loneliness became motivation to create community for people in similar circumstances. Today, she coordinates support networks for widows, divorcees, and single parents throughout her region. Her home, which felt empty after her husband's death, regularly hosts gatherings that bring isolated people together for friendship, support, and practical help. The Christmas that she dreaded became the foundation for ministry that has touched hundreds of lives. Her personal loss became the source of healing for countless others facing similar losses. Saint Anthony didn't take away her grief, but he transformed it into compassion. He didn't bring back her husband, but he gave her purposes that honor his memory while creating new meaning for her life. Type, "Turn my pain into purpose" in the comments if you need St. Anthony to transform your loss into ministry that helps others heal. This is one of St. Anthony's most beautiful miracle specialties, taking broken hearts and making them into healing resources for other people with similar wounds, taking personal pain and transforming it into power that comforts, strengthens, and restores hope for countless others. A single father in Canada is about to discover how St. Anthony can transform the most challenging circumstances into platforms for helping others overcome similar challenges. His wife left him and their 3 young children 2 years ago, providing no explanation except that she needed space to find herself. She moved across the country, changed her phone number, and cut off all contact with the family she abandoned. He's been struggling to work full-time while managing household responsibilities that usually require 2 parents. Daycare costs consume most of his income. His children ask constantly when mommy is coming home, and he has no answer that doesn't break his heart. Friends offer sympathy, but can't provide the practical help he needs most: someone to watch the kids during overtime hours that could improve their financial situation, or simply another adult in the house during the lonely hours after children's bedtime. He prays to St. Anthony not for his wife's return. That seems impossible at this point, but for the strength and wisdom to raise his children well as a single parent, and for practical help that makes their daily struggles more manageable. St. Anthony's response comes through connections that create both immediate assistance and long-term community support that transforms single parenting from overwhelming burden to manageable challenge. A coworker mentions that his own father raised 4 children alone after their mother died, and offers to share practical strategies that made the experience less overwhelming. This conversation leads to regular mentoring sessions that provide both emotional support and practical guidance. The co-worker introduces him to a network of single parents who coordinate childcare sharing, meal preparation assistance, and social activities that give their children the sense of extended family that single-parent households often lack. Through this network, he meets other parents whose children become friends with his children. What started as practical childcare cooperation develops into genuine friendships for both adults and children. His experience navigating single parenthood successfully inspires him to start support groups for newly single fathers who feel as overwhelmed and isolated as he once did. Today, he facilitates workshops that teach practical single parenting skills, coordinates support networks that provide both emotional and practical assistance, and mentors fathers who are just beginning their journey through unexpected single parenthood. His children, who once felt different and incomplete because they only had one parent at home, now feel special because their father helps so many other families find stability and hope. They understand that their early struggles prepared their family to become a source of strength for others. The wife who abandoned them inadvertently created the circumstances that allowed this man to discover gifts for helping and healing that he never would have developed otherwise. St. Anthony transformed abandonment into ministry, rejection into purpose, family breakdown into community building. His story proves that St. Anthony doesn't always restore what was lost, but he always provides something better than what was taken away. Sometimes the miracle isn't getting back what we lost, but discovering what we gain through learning to live powerfully without it. But St. Anthony's most stunning miracles often happen in situations where hope itself seems to have died, where faith feels impossible, where even prayer seems pointless because the circumstances are too far gone for any intervention to matter. A grandmother in South Africa is facing exactly this kind of impossible situation right now. Her daughter died in a car accident 6 months ago, leaving behind twin 4-year-old boys who have been traumatized by the loss of their mother. The children cry constantly, refuse to eat properly, wake up screaming from nightmares, and ask repeatedly when their mommy is coming home. Child psychologists say the trauma is so severe that recovery could take years, if it happens at all. At 72 years old, She never expected to be raising young children again. Her health isn't strong enough for chasing toddlers. Her finances can't stretch to cover the expenses of caring for 2 growing boys. Her energy depletes quickly under the constant demands of childcare. Social workers suggest that the children might be better served in foster care with younger parents who have more resources and energy. Extended family members agree that the situation is too much for her to handle alone. But this grandmother knows something that the experts don't understand, that St. Anthony specializes in creating family miracles that exceed human solutions. She prays not for easier circumstances or younger strength, but for supernatural grace that enables her to provide exactly what these traumatized children need during their healing process. She asks St. Anthony not to take away the children's grief, but to transform it into the kind of healing that creates stronger family bonds than existed even before their loss. St. Anthony's response comes through a series of connections and resources that no social service agency could have coordinated, but which provide exactly what this family needs to heal and thrive together. A retired teacher in the neighborhood mentions having experience with traumatized children and offers to provide educational activities that help the boys process their emotions while learning necessary social skills. A local pediatrician, whose own children were raised by their grandmother after their parents died young, volunteers to provide free medical care and connects the family with specialists who donate services for trauma recovery. A community support group for grandparents raising grandchildren provides both practical assistance and emotional support from others who understand the unique challenges of late-in-life parenting. Most importantly, the grandmother's unwavering love and determination provide the security and stability that allows the boys' natural resilience to gradually overcome their trauma. Within 18 months, the children who seemed permanently damaged by loss are thriving in ways that amaze everyone who knew their initial condition. Their nightmares have been replaced by peaceful sleep. Their constant crying has been replaced by laughter and play. Their fear of abandonment has been replaced by confidence in their grandmother's permanent love. The social workers who recommended foster placement now point to this family as an example of how love and determination can overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable. The boys who lost their mother tragically young are growing up with a deeper appreciation for family bonds and a stronger sense of security than many children who never experience loss. Their early trauma, healed through their grandmother's faith-filled love, becomes the foundation for unusual emotional maturity and compassion for others who suffer. This grandmother's willingness to trust St. Anthony with an impossible situation creates a family miracle that proves love is more powerful than age, faith is stronger than circumstances, and prayer can provide resources that human systems cannot supply. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. You're not just joining a community, you're connecting with people who have experienced St. Anthony's power to transform impossible family situations into beautiful testimonies of healing and hope. But let me share something that might surprise you about how St. Anthony chooses to work his most powerful miracles. Sometimes he doesn't change the circumstances at all. Instead, he changes the people in those circumstances so completely that the same situation becomes a blessing rather than a burden. A man in India discovered this when he was diagnosed with a progressive disease that would gradually rob him of his mobility, his independence, and eventually his ability to care for himself. The doctors were honest about the prognosis: increasing weakness, eventual wheelchair dependence, and need for full-time care within a few years. There was no cure, no treatment that could slow the progression, no hope for improvement. At 45 years old, with a wife and teenage children depending on his income, the diagnosis felt like a death sentence, not just for him, but for his entire family's future. He prayed to St. Anthony for healing, for a miraculous cure, for the disease to be reversed or eliminated completely. But as months passed and his condition continued to deteriorate, according to medical predictions, he began to feel that his prayers were unanswered. That's when he changed his prayer from asking St. Anthony to remove the disease to asking him to reveal the purpose that could be fulfilled through living with the disease. He stopped praying for healing and started praying for meaning. He stopped asking for the circumstances to change and started asking for the grace to find value in circumstances that couldn't be changed. St. Anthony's response transformed not just how he experienced his illness, but how his entire family approached their future together. Instead of viewing his increasing limitations as loss, they began to see them as opportunities to discover forms of love and service that healthy families never develop. His teenage children learned compassion, responsibility, and appreciation for health that their peers wouldn't understand for decades. His wife discovered depths of devotion and strength that revealed character qualities she never knew she possessed. His neighbors and friends witnessed a family facing serious challenges with such grace, unity, and even joy that their example changed how the entire community approached their own difficulties. He began writing about his experience, creating articles and eventually books that helped other families navigate similar diagnoses with hope and practical wisdom. His writing led to speaking opportunities, which led to consulting with medical facilities about patient care, which led to developing support programs that revolutionized how hospitals help families adjust to progressive illnesses. Today, thousands of families facing similar diagnoses receive resources, support, and hope through programs that exist because one man stopped asking St. Anthony to change his circumstances and started asking him to reveal the purpose hidden within those circumstances. His disease, which should have destroyed his family's future, became the foundation for ministry that helps countless families discover strength, unity, and meaning they never would have found without facing similar challenges. The miracle wasn't physical healing, it was spiritual transformation that turned medical tragedy into purpose-filled ministry that continues blessing lives around the world. Tell us in the comments about a situation in your life where you've been praying for circumstances to change, but might need to pray instead for grace to find purpose within those circumstances. This reveals one of St. Anthony's most profound miracle specialties, teaching people to recognize that some of their greatest blessings come disguised as their worst problems, and some of their most meaningful purposes emerge from their most painful experiences. A young woman in Mexico is about to learn this truth in a way that will transform not just her own life, but the lives of countless other people who feel rejected by circumstances beyond their control. She was born with a facial disfigurement that makes social interaction difficult and romantic relationships seem impossible. Despite multiple surgeries, her appearance remains significantly different from conventional standards of beauty. Throughout her teenage years and into her 20s, she prayed constantly to St. Anthony for physical healing that would make her look normal, for surgical miracles that would give her the face she wanted, for any intervention that would allow her to blend in with others her age. The healing she wanted never came. The surgeries provided minimal improvement. Her appearance remained a source of stares, whispers, and social rejection that made ordinary activities feel like endurance tests. She began to feel that St. Anthony had either not heard her prayers or had decided not to answer them. Her faith wavered as she wondered why others received miraculous healings while she continued to struggle with the same challenges year after year. That changed when she shifted her prayers from asking St. Anthony to change how she looked to asking him to reveal how her appearance could become a gift that helps other people rather than a burden that limits her own life. She stopped praying to be beautiful and started praying to be useful. She stopped asking to fit in and started asking to stand out for purposes that serve others who feel different, rejected, or excluded. St. Anthony's response came through opportunities that never would have existed if she had looked conventionally attractive, but which allowed her to reach people that conventional beauty could never touch. Her experience with rejection made her sensitive to others who felt excluded for any reason: physical differences, social awkwardness, economic disadvantages, cultural barriers, or any other factor that made fitting in difficult. She began volunteering with organizations that serve marginalized populations, bringing understanding and compassion that came from her own experience of being treated as different. Her comfort with standing out gave her courage to advocate for people who couldn't advocate for themselves, speaking truth in situations where others remained silent to preserve their social acceptability. Her freedom from conventional beauty standards allowed her to focus on developing character, intelligence, and spiritual qualities that made her attractive in ways that have nothing to do with physical appearance, but everything to do with the beauty of the soul. Today, she leads international programs that help young people with physical differences, social challenges, or other factors that make them feel excluded from mainstream society. Her work has prevented countless suicides among young people who felt their differences made life not worth living. Her example has inspired thousands of people to embrace their uniqueness rather than hide their distinctiveness. The face she wanted to change has become the face of hope for people who feel hopeless about their own appearance or social acceptance. The difference she wanted to eliminate has become the difference that makes her uniquely qualified for ministry that literally saves lives. Saint Anthony didn't give her conventional beauty, but he gave her something far more valuable: the ability to help other people discover their own unique beauty and purpose, regardless of how they look or how others treat them. The miracle she thought she needed would have eliminated her ability to do the work she was born to do. The healing she requested would have prevented the healing she was meant to provide for others. Share this video with someone who feels different, excluded, or rejected because of circumstances they can't change. They need to know that Saint Anthony can transform their differences into their greatest gifts for serving others. This is perhaps the most beautiful aspect of Saint Anthony's miracle working: his ability to show people that what they consider their greatest disadvantages are often their greatest qualifications for purposes they haven't yet discovered. But Saint Anthony's power isn't limited to personal transformation. Sometimes he works on scales that affect entire nations, reshaping political and economic circumstances through divine intervention that operates beyond human understanding or control. A small country in Eastern Europe experienced this kind of national-level Saint Anthony miracle when they faced economic collapse that threatened to destroy their democracy and force their people into desperate poverty. International debt had reached unsustainable levels. Currency devaluation made imported goods unaffordable for most families. Unemployment rose while businesses closed or relocated to countries with more stable economies. Political leaders exhausted every diplomatic and economic strategy available, but the problems were too complex and too deeply rooted for human solutions to address effectively. Opposition parties prepared to take power by promising solutions they knew they couldn't deliver. International observers predicted civil unrest, government collapse, and potential conflict with neighboring countries as economic refugees sought opportunities elsewhere. In this moment of national desperation, religious leaders called for a day of unified prayer to Saint Anthony, asking him to intervene in their country's crisis with the same power that had historically protected their nation during previous periods of foreign occupation and internal strife. The response came through a series of international developments that no political strategist had predicted and no economic analyst had considered possible. A previously unknown mineral deposit was discovered that contained resources essential for emerging technologies. International companies began bidding for extraction rights, providing immediate government revenue and long-term employment opportunities. A major international corporation decided to relocate their regional headquarters to this country, citing the educated workforce, strategic location, and government incentives that made the move economically advantageous. Tourism increased dramatically as international travelers discovered the country's cultural attractions, natural beauty, and favorable exchange rates that made vacations affordable while providing significant revenue for local businesses. Within 3 years, the country that had been facing economic collapse became one of the fastest-growing economies in the region. Unemployment dropped to historically low levels. Government debt was manageable. Living standards improved for all income levels. But the most remarkable aspect of this transformation was how quickly and simultaneously these positive developments occurred. Economic experts studying the recovery found no precedent for such comprehensive improvement happening so rapidly in a country that had been so close to complete collapse. International observers attributed the turnaround to a combination of good fortune, strategic planning, and favorable global economic conditions. But the people of that nation knew that their prayers to Saint Anthony had been answered through divine intervention that exceeded anything human efforts could have achieved. The religious leaders who organized the National Prayer Day noted that multiple international business executives mentioned having dreams or intuitive impressions about investment opportunities in this specific country during the months following the prayer initiative. Today, this nation serves as an example of rapid economic recovery that development economists study to understand how countries can emerge from seemingly hopeless financial crises. But more importantly, it serves as testimony to the power of unified faith to attract divine intervention that transforms national circumstances through supernatural coordination of international resources and opportunities. Type, "My nation needs St. Anthony's blessing," in the comments if you want to join in praying for countries facing political or economic challenges that seem beyond human solution. The same St. Anthony who coordinates international economic developments to save nations can coordinate circumstances in your personal life to create breakthroughs that seem impossible from your current perspective. The key is understanding that St. Anthony works through natural means to accomplish supernatural results. He doesn't usually suspend the laws of physics or economics. Instead, he orchestrates events, timing, and human decisions in ways that create outcomes that look miraculous, even though they happen through apparently normal processes. A family in Australia is about to experience exactly this kind of miracle. Supernatural results achieved through perfectly timed natural events that create outcomes no human planning could have arranged. They've been trying to sell their home for 8 months to relocate for better job opportunities, but the real estate market in their area has been slow, and their house hasn't attracted serious buyers despite being priced competitively. Their savings are nearly depleted from carrying mortgage payments on a house they're not living in while paying rent where they currently work. The job opportunity that motivated their move won't wait much longer for them to complete the relocation. They face the possibility of losing both the new job opportunity and their family home if the sale doesn't happen quickly. Real estate agents suggest reducing the price significantly, but that would eliminate any profit from the sale and might not even cover their outstanding mortgage balance. Tonight they pray to St. Anthony not just for a buyer to appear, but for a buyer who values their home enough to pay a fair price that allows them to complete their relocation without financial loss. Tomorrow afternoon, a phone call comes that will solve their housing crisis in a way that exceeds anything they dared to hope for. A family relocating from overseas has been searching for a home exactly like theirs in exactly their neighborhood. International company transfers have delayed their arrival, but now they need to close on a house immediately to complete their own relocation. They're willing to pay above the asking price for immediate possession and are prepared to waive inspection contingencies to accelerate the closing process. But the miracle doesn't stop there. The international family has furniture and vehicles they can't ship internationally, which they offer to sell at significantly below market value to anyone purchasing their previous home. The Australian family not only sells their house quickly at an excellent price, but acquires furnishings and transportation for their new location at costs that save them thousands of dollars they hadn't budgeted for the move. The real estate agent handling both transactions mentions that in 15 years of sales, she's never seen two families whose timing and needs matched so perfectly that both achieved outcomes better than either had originally hoped for. The international family mentions that they had prayed for guidance in finding the right home and felt unusually confident about this purchase, despite not seeing the property in person before making their offer. Both families recognize that St. Anthony coordinated their circumstances with timing so precise that the solution served everyone involved perfectly, creating multiple miracles through a single transaction. This demonstrates how St. Anthony often works his most effective miracles, not by creating supernatural events, but by coordinating natural events with timing so perfect that the results look miraculous, even though they happen through normal processes. His miracle power operates through divine timing that brings the right people together at exactly the right moments, with exactly the right needs and resources to create mutual benefit that exceeds what either could achieve independently. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. When you join our community, you're connecting with people who've learned to recognize St. Anthony's miraculous coordination in what others might dismiss as mere coincidence. But St. Anthony's timing miracles aren't limited to convenient solutions for comfortable problems. His most powerful interventions often happen in life or death situations where timing is literally the difference between survival and tragedy. A paramedic in the United States experienced this during what should have been a routine emergency call that turned into a race against time, where St. Anthony's intervention saved multiple lives through split-second timing coordination. The call came in as a standard heart attack emergency, but when the ambulance arrived, they found a situation much more complex and dangerous than the initial report had indicated. The heart attack victim was a single father whose collapse had left his 2 young children alone in a house that was filling with smoke from an electrical fire that had started in the basement. The children, ages 3 and 5, were trapped upstairs with smoke rising and flames beginning to spread up the stairway. The father was unconscious and couldn't be moved immediately due to his critical condition. Standard protocol required choosing between treating the heart attack victim or evacuating the children first, but attempting either alone would likely result in losing both the father and the children to their respective emergencies. The paramedic team faced an impossible decision, with no time to call for additional emergency support and no way to handle both crises simultaneously with available personnel. In that moment of desperate decision-making, the lead paramedic prayed silently to St. Anthony for wisdom and timing that would allow them to save everyone involved. What happened over the next 12 minutes was later studied by emergency response training programs as an example of perfect crisis management and coordination that seemed to exceed normal human capabilities. As the paramedic team began treating the father, neighbors who had never met this family appeared from multiple directions and volunteered to help with child evacuation, despite having no training for emergency situations. The neighbors formed a human chain that safely evacuated the children through an upstairs window, while the paramedics stabilized the father enough to transport him to the hospital. Fire department units arrived exactly when they were needed to prevent the fire from spreading to adjacent homes, despite having been delayed by other emergencies that should have prevented their timely response. The hospital trauma team was unusually well prepared for the heart attack victim's arrival because they had just finished treating a similar case and hadn't yet dispersed to other duties. All 3 lives were saved through a coordination of timing, resources, and volunteer assistance that emergency management experts called statistically impossible, given the number of variables that had to align perfectly for success. The neighbors who helped with the rescue later said they had felt an unusual compulsion to come outside at exactly the moment when help was needed, despite having no knowledge of the emergency situation until they saw the smoke and ambulance. The fire department commander noted that their response time was the fastest in department history due to a series of traffic light timing that created clear pathways through normally congested areas. The paramedic who prayed for St. Anthony's assistance recognized that the coordination of all these factors exceeded anything human planning could have achieved, especially given the time constraints and complex nature of the simultaneous emergencies. Today, this rescue is used as a training example that demonstrates how emergency situations can be resolved through community cooperation and precise timing. But the paramedic knows that the real story involves divine intervention that orchestrated human responses to create miraculous outcomes. The father recovered completely and was able to return home to his children, who experienced no lasting trauma from their rescue. The house was repaired, and the family's life was restored to normal, all because one paramedic trusted St. Anthony to coordinate timing and resources for a perfect rescue. Tell us in the comments about emergency situations where you've experienced or witnessed timing that seemed too perfect to be coincidence. St. Anthony often works through split-second coordination that saves lives and prevents tragedies. This reveals another dimension of St. Anthony's miracle power, his ability to coordinate the actions of multiple people who aren't consciously cooperating, but whose individual decisions create collective outcomes that serve purposes beyond their individual awareness. The neighbors who felt compelled to come outside didn't know they were being positioned to help with a rescue. The fire department officers who experienced unusually light traffic didn't know they were being guided to arrive at the perfect moment. The hospital trauma team didn't know their preparation was being timed for a specific emergency.
But St. Anthony sees the larger picture and can influence individual decisions in ways that create coordination, serving purposes that exceed what any single person understands or intends. A teacher in Japan is about to experience this kind of invisible coordination when her classroom faces a crisis that requires responses from people who have no knowledge of each other's actions, but whose combined efforts create a perfect solution. Her school serves a low-income community where many students come from families struggling with financial difficulties, language barriers, and social challenges that make academic success difficult despite the children's natural intelligence and potential. Budget cuts have eliminated programs that provided extra support for students who need additional help with language development, homework assistance, and social skills that middle-class families typically provide at home. Test scores have declined as students fall behind in subjects they could master with appropriate support. College preparation programs have been canceled, limiting students' opportunities for higher education and career advancement. She watches bright, motivated students losing confidence and giving up on academic goals because they lack resources and support systems that more affluent schools take for granted. She prays to St. Anthony not just for more funding or better programs, but for a comprehensive solution that addresses the root causes of her students' challenges while providing opportunities that exceed what even well-funded schools typically offer. St. Anthony's response comes through a series of connections and resource discoveries that create educational opportunities more comprehensive than anything this school district has ever experienced. A retired businessman reading about the school's challenges in a local newspaper mentions the situation to his former colleagues, several of whom volunteer to provide tutoring and mentoring services that give students one-on-one attention impossible in regular classroom settings. A university graduate program looking for community service opportunities partners with the school to provide student teachers who deliver specialized instruction while completing their own educational requirements. A technology company upgrading their computer systems donates equipment that transforms the school's ability to provide modern educational resources and online learning opportunities. Local businesses begin offering internship and job shadowing programs that give students real-world experience and career connections, typically available only to students from more privileged backgrounds. Within 2 years, this school's test scores exceed district averages, college enrollment rates triple, and students begin receiving scholarship opportunities to universities they had never considered attainable. But the most remarkable aspect of this transformation is how each contributor mentions being influenced by different factors: newspaper articles, conversations with friends, business networking discussions, community service requirements, that all led to the same school at the same time. The businessman who initiated the volunteer tutoring program says he hadn't read local news in months, but felt compelled to pick up that particular newspaper on the day the school's story appeared. The university program coordinator says she had been looking for community partners for 2 years, but never considered elementary schools until she attended a conference where the keynote speaker mentioned this specific school district. The technology company manager says they usually donate equipment to large organizations, but this time he felt strongly that their resources should go to a small school that could benefit more significantly from the contribution. Each contributor made independent decisions based on their individual circumstances and motivations, but their combined efforts created a comprehensive solution that addressed every aspect of the school's challenges simultaneously. The teacher who prayed for comprehensive solutions recognizes that St. Anthony coordinated these independent decisions to create collective support that transforms not just her classroom, but her entire school's ability to serve students effectively. Her students, who were falling behind due to circumstances beyond their control, now have access to resources, mentoring, and opportunities that position them for success, exceeding what many students in more affluent areas achieve.
This demonstrates Saint Anthony's ability to work through complex systems and multiple individuals to create solutions that serve entire communities rather than just addressing individual problems. Share this video with educators, parents, and anyone concerned about children's educational opportunities. They need to know that Saint Anthony can coordinate resources and support systems that transform educational environments in ways that serve entire communities. As we approach the conclusion of this powerful prayer encounter, I want you to understand something that will change how you relate to Saint Anthony for the rest of your life. Everything you've heard tonight, every testimony, every miracle, every impossible situation transformed into beautiful blessing, represents not just what Saint Anthony has done for other people, but what he wants to do in your specific circumstances right now. The financial provision that rescued families from bankruptcy is available for your economic challenges. The healing power that cured terminal illnesses is available for your health concerns. The relationship restoration that saved marriages is available for your family conflicts. The protection that saved children from danger is available for your loved ones. The career breakthroughs that transformed professional failures into success stories are available for your work situations. The community transformations that changed entire regions are available for your local area. But most importantly, the faith that activated all these miracles is available for your spiritual life right now, tonight, in this sacred moment when heaven's power intersects with earthly need through your willing heart. Saint Anthony doesn't play favorites. He doesn't reserve his best miracles for people more deserving than you. He doesn't wait for perfect circumstances or flawless faith before he acts on behalf of those who trust in his intercession. He responds to desperate faith expressed through grateful hearts that recognize his power, trust his timing, and expect his intervention even when natural circumstances suggest that hope is foolish. The mother in Manila, whose daughter needs brain surgery, will go to sleep tonight, trusting that Saint Anthony has already begun arranging the surgical team, the timing, the resources, and the recovery process that will restore her child to perfect health. The businessman in Sao Paulo will wake up tomorrow, prepared to receive the phone call that transforms his dying company into thriving enterprise because his faith created the spiritual conditions that allow Saint Anthony to coordinate business miracles. The single mother in Detroit will prepare her family for financial security she's never experienced because her trust in Saint Anthony's provision attracts supernatural resources that exceed her survival needs. Every person whose situation seemed hopeless when this video began now understands that Saint Anthony specializes in hopeless cases, impossible circumstances, and desperate situations that appear beyond human solution. The same Saint Anthony who coordinates international economic developments to save nations can coordinate circumstances in your personal life to create breakthroughs that seem impossible from your current perspective. The key is understanding that Saint Anthony works through natural means to accomplish supernatural results. He doesn't usually suspend the laws of physics or economics. Instead, he orchestrates events, timing, and human decisions in ways that create outcomes that look miraculous even though they happen through apparently normal processes. As we approach the conclusion of this powerful prayer encounter, I want you to understand something that will change how you relate to Saint Anthony for the rest of your life. Everything you've heard tonight, every testimony, every miracle, every impossible situation transformed into beautiful blessing represents not just what Saint Anthony has done for other people, but what he wants to do in your specific circumstances right now. The financial provision that rescued families from bankruptcy is available for your economic challenges. The healing power that cured terminal illnesses is available for your health concerns. The relationship restoration that saved marriages is available for your family conflicts. The protection that saved children from danger is available for your loved ones. The career breakthroughs that transformed professional failures into success stories are available for your work situations. The community transformations that changed entire regions are available for your local area. But most importantly, the faith that activated all these miracles is available for your spiritual life right now, tonight, in this sacred moment when heaven's power intersects with earthly need through your willing heart. Saint Anthony doesn't play favorites. He doesn't reserve his best miracles for people more deserving than you. He doesn't wait for perfect circumstances or flawless faith before he acts on behalf of those who trust in his intercession. He responds to desperate faith expressed through grateful hearts that recognize his power, trust his timing, and expect his intervention even when natural circumstances suggest that hope is foolish. The mother in Manila whose daughter needs brain surgery will go to sleep tonight, trusting that Saint Anthony has already begun arranging the surgical team, the timing, the resources, and the recovery process that will restore her child to perfect health. The businessman in São Paulo will wake up tomorrow prepared to receive the phone call that transforms his dying company into thriving enterprise because his faith created the spiritual conditions that allow Saint Anthony to coordinate business miracles. The single mother in Detroit will prepare her family for financial security she's never experienced because her trust in Saint Anthony's provision attracts supernatural resources that exceed her survival needs. Every person whose situation seemed hopeless when this video began now understands that Saint Anthony specializes in hopeless cases, impossible circumstances, and desperate situations that appear beyond human solution. Your situation is not too complex for his intervention. Your problems are not too large for his power. Your needs are not too urgent for his timing. Your faith is not too small for his miracles. Right now, as these words reach your heart, Saint Anthony is positioning himself to demonstrate his miraculous power through your specific circumstances in ways that will amaze everyone who knows your situation. But your part is to pray with the same faith you've heard demonstrated throughout these testimonies, not hoping that Saint Anthony might help, but knowing with absolute certainty that he will help, not begging for intervention, but thanking him for intervention already in progress. Let's pray together one final time, uniting our voices and hearts in the kind of faith-filled prayer that moves Saint Anthony to immediate action. Saint Anthony of Padua, miracle worker beyond human comprehension, we conclude this sacred encounter with hearts overflowing with gratitude for your faithfulness to desperate souls throughout history, and with complete confidence in your power to work miracles in our lives right now. You have heard every word we've spoken tonight, felt every tear we've shed in secret, understood every need we've carried in silence. You know our situations better than we can explain them, and you care about our concerns more than we dare to hope. We thank you for the breakthroughs that are already in motion, for the resources that are already being prepared, for the people who are already being positioned to help us, for the circumstances that are already being arranged for our benefit. We praise you for the healing that is already flowing through bodies that need it, for the provision that is already being released from unexpected sources, for the protection that is already surrounding our loved ones, for the opportunities that are already being created for our advancement. We celebrate the relationships that are already being restored, the injustices that are already being corrected, the attacks that are already being defeated, the problems that are already being solved through your supernatural intervention. Saint Anthony, we don't just ask for your help, we claim your miracles. We don't just hope for your intervention, we expect your immediate response. We don't just pray for breakthrough, we prepare for breakthrough that exceeds our greatest expectations. Work through our lives in ways that bring glory to God, blessing to our families, healing to our communities, and hope to everyone who witnesses your miraculous power demonstrated through our testimonies. Let our impossible situations become proof of your incredible abilities. Let our desperate circumstances become platforms for displaying your supernatural solutions. Let our broken hearts become fountains of healing for others who need to know that miracles still happen for those who trust completely in your intercession. In the mighty name of Jesus, through your powerful and immediate intervention, Saint Anthony of Padua, we pray with faith that moves mountains and receive with hearts prepared for miracles that will astound everyone who sees them. Amen. If this prayer session has stirred your heart and strengthened your faith, smash that like button and let Saint Anthony know you believe in his miracle power. Subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you'll be part of our community when we share the testimonies of miracles that result from tonight's prayers. Most importantly, share this video with everyone you know who needs to encounter St. Anthony's power. Share it with the person facing medical crisis, the family struggling financially, the couple whose marriage needs restoration, the parent whose child needs protection, the individual whose career needs breakthrough. Your obedience in sharing could be the divine appointment that delivers someone's miracle. Your action could be the key that unlocks another person's breakthrough. Your faith demonstrated through sharing could be the catalyst that triggers supernatural intervention in multiple lives. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't let this sacred moment pass without taking action that multiplies the miracle power released through tonight's encounter. Comment below and tell St. Anthony exactly what miracle you're expecting him to work in your life. Be specific, be bold, be confident. Let your faith declaration become the seed that produces supernatural harvest in your circumstances. Type your miracle request with the same faith you've heard demonstrated throughout these testimonies. Declare your breakthrough with the same confidence that activated the miracles you've witnessed tonight. Remember, St. Anthony responds to desperate faith expressed through grateful hearts. Your miracle is not coming eventually. It's beginning right now. Your breakthrough is not future hope. It's present reality. Your testimony is not someday possibility. It's tomorrow's certainty. Until we meet again in prayer, live with expectation, watch with faith, and prepare to share the miracle testimony that will inspire others to trust in St. Anthony's incredible power. Your miracle journey begins now. Your breakthrough story starts today. Your testimony of St. Anthony's power will soon bless countless lives who need to know that nothing is impossible for those who believe without doubting. St. Anthony of Padua, work your miracles. Demonstrate your power. Show your love. Answer our prayers. We trust you completely.